What if I told you that being single is not a curse, but one of the greatest opportunities life can give you? In a world that constantly tells you that your worth is measured by who you date, marry, or settle down with, Stoicism flips the script. It tells you your strength, your freedom, and your ability to master yourself shine brightest when you walk alone. The truth is, most people don't understand the power of solitude. They see singleness as loneliness, but the Stoics saw it as liberation. The kind of liberation that allows you to live without chains, distractions, or compromises that weaken your mind and character. So, if you've ever felt the pressure to rush into relationships just to meet society's expectations, this is for you. And before we dive deeper into Stoic wisdom, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on powerful lessons like this. Lessons that can shift the way you live, think, and conquer life. Freedom from external control. One of the greatest gifts of staying single, according to Stoic wisdom, is the freedom it gives you over your own life. Epictetus, one of the most respected Stoics, taught that true freedom doesn't come from wealth, fame, or relationships. It comes from self-mastery and independence. When you are single, you are not bound by the constant push and pull of someone else's emotions, expectations, or demands. This doesn't mean relationships are bad, but the Stoics understood something modern society often ignores. Every attachment creates a potential chain. The more people you tie yourself to, the more you risk being controlled by things beyond your will. Think about it. When you're in a relationship, even the healthiest one, you naturally begin to compromise. Where you live, how you spend your time, how much money you save or spend. It all starts to involve someone else's needs and desires. That isn't always wrong, but it can limit your ability to act according to your own principles. And if you find yourself with someone who doesn't share your values, you can end up sacrificing parts of yourself just to keep the peace. Marcus Aurelius warned about this kind of sacrifice when he said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If you're constantly bending your thoughts and actions to please another person, over time, you risk losing your authentic self. Being single allows you to live without these hidden chains. You don't need permission to chase a dream. You don't need to justify how you spend your evenings, or why you want to wake up at 5 a.m. and push yourself toward greatness. You live by your own rhythm. You rise and fall by your own choices. And this level of independence is not selfish. It is the soil in which discipline, purpose, and strength grow. The Stoics believe that life is short and unpredictable. To waste it being entangled in unnecessary drama, unhealthy attachments, or emotional instability is to waste the precious time you've been given. By staying single, you are free to focus fully on what you can control. Your mind, your habits, your craft, your character. That is the ultimate Stoic advantage. You are not pulled in 10 different directions, but centered on one path, becoming the strongest version of yourself. So when people look at you and say, "Why are you still single?" remind yourself, it is not weakness, it is strength. You're not avoiding love. You are cultivating freedom. And freedom, in the eyes of the Stoics, is the highest form of power. The power of self-mastery in solitude. The Stoics taught that the hardest person to rule is yourself. Conquering nations, building wealth, or winning popularity is meaningless if you are still a slave to your own impulses. And here's where staying single becomes a hidden advantage. It gives you the space and clarity to develop self-mastery without constant external distraction. When you are in a relationship, much of your mental energy naturally shifts toward another person. You think about what they need, what they want, how they feel, how your actions affect them. Again, this isn't bad in itself, but it means that your time and energy for inner growth are divided. Solitude, on the other hand, removes that division. You are left face to face with your own habits, your own flaws, and your own mind. And in that silence, you either run from yourself or you master yourself. Seneca once said, "No man is free who is not a master of himself." Think about the daily struggles you face. Procrastination, distraction, laziness, overindulgence, fear. These are the real enemies of progress. When you are single, you can build a life structure that directly attacks these weaknesses. You can wake up earlier, design a strict routine, dedicate hours to study, fitness, or a business idea, without having to negotiate those decisions with someone else. In solitude, you can hold yourself accountable with ruthless honesty. Self-mastery also means training your emotions. Relationships can stir up jealousy, anger, insecurity, or dependence, emotions that cloud your judgment and weaken your discipline. But when you are single, you learn to regulate yourself. You face boredom without reaching for unhealthy coping mechanisms. You face loneliness without clinging to the wrong people. You face stress by strengthening your inner calm instead of expecting someone else to soothe you. This is the Stoic path: to live by reason, not impulse; to respond with discipline, not emotion; to rise each day not asking, "What do they want from me?" but instead, "What do I demand of myself today?" Solitude sharpens the mind like a blade, because it forces you to look within. And in that sharpening, you become unshakable. Staying single, far from being a weakness, is a golden opportunity to build the strongest foundation a human can have: control over yourself, building purpose instead of distraction. One of the most overlooked advantages of staying single is the ability to direct your full energy toward building a life of purpose, rather than being swept away by constant distractions. The truth is, many people don't even realize how much time and emotional bandwidth relationships consume. The texting, the planning, the arguing, the compromises, the highs and lows of emotional drama. These things take up space in your mind that could otherwise be invested into something far greater: your personal mission. The Stoics believed that every human being is called to live with virtue and purpose. Marcus Aurelius didn't rise to become the most powerful man in the world because he was chasing attention, pleasure, or validation. He understood his duty, his mission, his responsibility to act with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. Purpose is what gives your life weight. Without it, days feel empty, years feel wasted, and life slips through your fingers unnoticed. Now think about how often relationships become a substitute for purpose. Many people throw themselves into love, drama, or social validation because it distracts them from the frightening question: what am I really here to do? Instead of building a craft, a business, or a legacy, they build their identity around being wanted, admired, or desired. The Stoics would call this a tragedy, because the greatest tragedy isn't failing in love, but failing yourself. When you are single, you have the silence and clarity to ask yourself the hard questions. What do I value most? What kind of life am I trying to build? What do I want people to remember about me when I'm gone? These questions lead you down the path of purpose. And once you define your purpose, you wake up with direction. Every action you take, every book you read, every workout, every hour of focused work becomes a brick in the foundation of a life worth living. Here's the brutal truth: relationships often distract people from purpose. They create comfort zones where growth slows down. But solitude forces you to confront discomfort head-on. It demands that you take responsibility for your destiny instead of leaning on someone else. And in that responsibility, you discover power. The Stoics would remind you that time is fleeting. Every moment you waste is a piece of your life you will never get back. To waste it chasing validation or distractions is to betray yourself. But to use solitude as a forge to craft purpose, that is how you transform from ordinary to extraordinary. Staying single is not about avoiding love forever. It's about building a strong enough foundation that love, when it comes, doesn't derail your mission. Purpose must always come first, because purpose is what makes life meaningful. And when you live with purpose, respect, admiration, and love naturally follow. Not because you beg for them, but because you earn them. Emotional freedom and true independence. One of the most underrated benefits of staying single, which the Stoics would call a form of mastery, is emotional freedom. Too often, people don't realize how much of their emotional well-being they've handed over to others. A single text message can make or break their day. A slight change in someone else's mood can send them spiraling. This is what Seneca warned about when he said that a man who depends on external things for his happiness is a slave. When you tie your self-worth to the approval of a partner, you put your peace at the mercy of forces outside your control. The Stoics believe that true freedom is not found in doing whatever you want, but in mastering your own mind. And staying single gives you the perfect opportunity to practice this mastery. You learn to control your emotional responses without relying on constant reassurance or external validation. Think about how powerful this is. If someone insults you, criticizes you, or even leaves you, it doesn't shake your inner foundation because you've already built emotional independence. You've trained yourself, through solitude, to recognize that your happiness comes from living in alignment with your values, not from being desired or accepted by someone else. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When you live by this principle, no one else can make you a prisoner of their moods or their approval. Staying single allows you to strengthen this independence because you are not constantly navigating the ups and downs of another person's emotional world. Instead, you have the silence and space to reflect, to breathe, to reset. You can observe your own thoughts without the noise of drama, and in doing so, you build resilience. This doesn't mean you become cold or unfeeling. It means you become strong enough that your emotions serve you instead of enslaving you. This is what the Stoics called ataraxia, a state of inner calm, where you are not shaken by every little ripple of life. It's not about indifference, but about clarity. And clarity is what gives you true power. In relationships, many people lose themselves trying to please others, or they compromise their values to keep the peace. But when you are emotionally independent, you don't bend out of fear, nor do you break under pressure. You stand firm in who you are. Imagine the strength of being unshakable in a world where everyone else is tossed around by external forces. That's what staying single can give you. A chance to train, to fortify your mind, to learn emotional self-sufficiency. Because once you master that, no one can ever truly control you. You'll engage in relationships from strength, not weakness. You'll give love without being desperate for it in return. And you'll know that your happiness is not dependent on anyone, but fully in your own hands. That is true freedom. That is true Stoic independence, turning solitude into power. Most people are terrified of being alone. They see solitude as loneliness, as if silence were something to fear. But to the Stoics, solitude was not an absence of life. It was the space where life becomes sharp, clear, and full of meaning. Staying single is not about isolating yourself from the world. It's about reclaiming your time, energy, and focus so you can turn solitude into strength. Think of solitude as a forge. Just as fire hardens steel, time alone hardens your spirit. When you're not distracted by constant demands from others, you begin to hear your own thoughts with clarity. You start to ask yourself deeper questions. Who am I becoming? Am I living according to my values? Am I building a life that reflects strength? Or am I drifting with the crowd? These are the questions that lead to growth. And they can only be answered when you stop drowning in noise. Marcus Aurelius often wrote in his meditations about retreating into his own mind. He said that a man always carries within himself a quiet place, untouched by the world, where he can retreat for renewal. That place is solitude. It is not loneliness. It is power. The difference lies in perspective. Loneliness is when you crave others to fill your emptiness. Solitude is when you discover you already have everything you need within. In solitude, you build self-discipline. You learn to manage your time, structure your days, and pursue your goals without waiting for someone else to push you. You stop leaning on the energy of others and begin generating your own. This is the foundation of independence. The man who can stand alone is the man who can stand anywhere. Even more, solitude sharpens creativity. History shows us that some of the greatest thinkers, Epictetus, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, crafted their wisdom not in the chaos of crowds, but in moments of stillness. When you allow yourself to embrace silence, your mind clears, and new ideas rise from beneath the surface. You begin to see solutions you missed before, strategies you didn't notice, and truths about life that most people ignore because they're too distracted to see them. And here's the paradox. Once you've mastered solitude, you become more powerful in relationships too. Because you no longer need others to fill you. You can choose people from strength, not from desperation. You don't settle for toxic attachments just to avoid being alone. You hold higher standards for the people you let in, because you already know how to thrive by yourself. Staying single, then, is not a weakness. It's an opportunity. It's a time to build, to grow, to sharpen your mind and spirit until you become unshakable. Solitude, embraced with Stoic wisdom, turns into your greatest weapon. While others waste their freedom chasing shallow validation, you use your freedom to build unbreakable character. That's the Stoic path. And once you learn to turn solitude into power, you'll never fear being alone again. Instead, you'll see it for what it truly is, the training ground of greatness.